At the southern part of Wisconsin, southwest of Milwaukee, there is a small town of Elkhorn. For all intents and purposes, Elkhorn is a picturesque little place with the nickname Christmas Card Town since before World War II. Yet on the outskirts of this quaint, quiet town, it is said to live a monster which lurks on the dark roads, in the sparse trees, and even in some of the neighboring areas. That monster is said to be an unknown, upright canine known as the Beast of Bray Road.
There have been reports of strange creatures in the area.
Witnesses say they couldn't believe what they were seeing.
What is that? Welcome, beloved fofers, doubters, naysayers, non-believers, and skeptics. Welcome to Paranormal Fable or Fact. I am Victor Trevino, joined by my co-host and beautiful wife, Tammy. Are you... What are you doing? You're just staring at the screen. What are you doing?
I forgot you were recording. Okay, wait.
Really?
Okay. Ready, go. We are your humble guides to tales of alleged hoaxes, unbelievable stories, and the overall strange.
Hallelujah. You got it. Okay, our email is pfableorfact@proton.me. Our Facebook and the rules will be in the show notes, as well as the rules for debunkers. We have a Zoom account now, so we are taking callers. If you want to be on the show, just shoot us an email. We'll allot a time where we can do an interview. Don't worry about how long your stories are. If the story's short, not a big deal. We'll just group them in with other stories. No problem.
Yep.
And remember, if you want to remain anonymous and all that good stuff, well, we can do all that. So we just want to let everybody know we are now taking listener stories.
Yay!
Yeah, pretty good, huh? Okay, so let's move on to the gist. In southeast Wisconsin, there were sightings of an unknown wolfish monster that occurred in the early 90s, and it was dubbed the Beast of Bray Road, named for the rural farm road on which it was first sighted and reported. The creature was reported to be between 6 and 7 feet tall, which is 1.8 meters or 2.1 meters, with a humanoid-style body, and that's very important, covered in fur or hair, with a head resembling a wolf and large red glowing or orange eyes. It is purported to have been seen moving both as a quadruped and bipedally, and some reports describe it more closely resembling that of a traditional werewolf. So that was quick. So we're just gonna move right into the red flags. Now, these aren't really red flags, baby, because there's very little debunking in this one. It's more about people are just seeing a coyote or a bear. The typical dismissiveness because people can't possibly be seeing anything like this. And we'll go into why they might be seeing something like this, baby, because I didn't know. I thought it was a flap. Even the gist, I thought it was just around the 90s. People saw something and then it just disappeared. No, there's sightings all the way up into the 2018s, and that's basically what we're going to try to quickly do, is go through some of the sightings and some of the encounters people have dating all the way back to 1936, baby. And then
so almost over 100 years.
Yeah. And then beyond that, one of the inarguable truths is Native American folklore, which talks about all kinds of stuff with wolves from that area. So the stories go way, way back, baby. I don't even know how long, probably hundreds and hundreds of years. So this idea that people are just, pulling it out of their hat to try to get attention and stuff is just nonsense. But anyway, So the first red flag / insight, in 1991, a local newspaper, The Week, called The Week, assigned a young reporter named Linda Godfrey to cover the story. At first, when Godfrey first arrived, she was skeptical, baby. She goes into the cop station and everybody's standoffish toward her, and she's like, what's going on here? And then she notices a folder on the sheriff's desk that says werewolves.
Oh, wow.
So werewolf cases or something like that. So she's like, what is that? And he basically starts to tell her, well, we have people around here seeing this werewolf running around. And she's like, what? So she realizes there is something to this story. And as she continued talking to witnesses, I believe she interviewed over 400 people, she slowly, gradually became convinced because of the sincerity of the people she was interviewing. They weren't crazy, they weren't nuts, they weren't liars. They were just average people.
Yeah.
So she started to think, I don't know if she actually believed in the creature, but at least she thought they saw something. You know what I mean? And she believed that they saw what they saw.
Right.
That they weren't trying to hoax her, they weren't trying to lie to her, etc. You know what I mean?
They were sincere about their sightings.
Right. I believe it was Linda Godfrey that dug up the initial report from 1936, because back in the 90s, baby, there was no internet. You know what I mean? In the early 91, the internet, you know what I mean? It was like
I remember.
AOL and stuff. You know what I mean? The internet was like in its infancy stage. You didn't have all the knowledge at your fingertips. So this sighting that I'm going to be talking about now, that dates back to 1936, on the grounds of the St. Coletta School for Exceptional Children in Jefferson. So you see how big it is.
Yeah, it's really big.
And just imagine how it would look at night, baby.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't look like a school, or like you said, it was a. It
used to be like a chapel, like a monastery.
Oh yeah, see, it doesn't look like that to me. To me, it looks like a psychiatric ward.
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of. It doesn't give me church vibes or school vibes.
I think it had something to do with the church. I think it was like an old chapel, and they built the buildings around it or something.
Yeah,
but
it's pretty creepy.
This story is now famous, baby. If you hear anything about the Beast of Bray Road, you're going to hear about this. This Mark Shackleman, who was a night watchman, just to go over the story real quick, he notices a large shadow. He goes over there. He sees something digging. He shines his light on it. It stands up and then runs off on all fours. He described it as a large, muscular man that was at least 6 feet tall, but it had a canine face. The body looked like a human's body, except it was covered with hair. It growled at him and he smelled rotting meat. And then the following night, he goes back out there and he sees the same thing. But this time it tried to growl at him and it sounded like some kind of speech. And there was all kinds of theories about what it meant. It was like Gerardo or something, I can't remember. But anyway, quick as a wink, he said it was so quick, it just fled across the field and ran into the woods and disappeared. And he never saw it again. So now let's move on to the next story.
Before you go to the next story.
Okay.
This school, what does it mean for exceptional children? Was it?
I think for gifted kids.
Okay.
I don't think it was, for kids with learning disabilities or anything like that. I think it was for,
okay. I was just curious.
So in the 80s, there were several alleged witnesses reported the Beast had made contact with their vehicles in that area. Because I didn't know this, baby. Elkhorn is like the hub of the county. It's like right smack dab in the middle of that county. I believe it's Jefferson County. I can't remember. And it's all farmlands and stuff. I showed you the map, and we'll probably have a map while we're talking about this so people can see what it looks like.
Yeah.
A satellite image of it. It's not way out in the middle of nowhere.
No.
Yeah, so the fact that people were seeing something like this on this road, that's why so many people were skeptical about it. That's why Linda Godfrey was skeptical about it, because there were so many sightings on this road and in the neighboring areas around Elkhorn, other little towns around Elkhorn. So basically what I was saying is back in the 80s, people complained that they saw this thing running out of the fields and it was making contact with their vehicles and leaving scratches on their vehicles. And people were reporting this back in the 80s.
Wow.
Now remember, Linda Godfrey didn't get there until 91.
Right.
So Franklin, Wisconsin, 1998. This is a personal story I found online. And I'm going to break it down, try to get through it as quick because it's a really long story, so I'm going to try to break it down. Basically, the teller of the story has somebody spending the night. They have all the lights off in the house. They're playing hide and seek. So he hides in the sunroom and he looks outside, just happens to look outside, and sees something in the bushes because there's a street light behind it, and he could see the silhouette of this thing because the street light, casting a shadow through the bush. So he calls his friend over, and they're watching it. He described the posture as though someone's hunching over, like you put your hands on your knees.
Yeah.
Like you're tired or like you're going to upchuck, you're going to lose your cookies. Yeah. It kind of leaned over, kind of hunched over, but that's how it was standing there. They watched it for a half hour, baby.
Wow.
Watched it slowly moving around the bushes, kind of looking around. They watched the ears moving. They could tell it wasn't anybody in a mask. They didn't know what it was. They had a 140-pound Akita in the house. He'd seen his dog over there by the bush. He could tell this thing was twice the size, at least 6 feet tall. He thinks a little taller on its hind legs, and it was on its hind legs. That's what was tripping him out. So his dad comes busting in there. What are you guys doing in the room in the dark? What are you doing? And they're like, look, Dad, look. So the dad turns off the light, goes over to the window, and he's watching this thing with the kids. Dad, I guess, just doesn't care, not afraid, Mr. Marine,
Yeah.
Or I don't know what he was. It didn't say. It just says he's a Vietnam vet. He gets this massive, really powerful 1,000 candle, flashlight, and shines it over there. The spotlight shines it over the bush, and this thing takes off running.
Oh, wow.
And he said it ran like a sprinter. And his dad told him later that he heard it splash through a creek right outside their property. So the teller of the story says years later he heard about this flap, about other people seeing it, and he knew that's what he had seen.
Yeah.
Because I guess, the stories came out, stories of the sightings came out before 98, of course.
Right.
But I guess he didn't hear about it until way later.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, I saw that too. That's what we saw.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Next story. October 31st, 1999, one witness, Doris Steen Gibson, stated she thought she ran something over. Her car, boom.
Yeah.
So she pulls over like a good Samaritan. I guess she was afraid she hit a dog or maybe a cat or something.
Right.
So she wanted to go see if she could help it.
Right.
And she sees this large wolf-like creature with red eyes in the middle of the road. It chases her back to her vehicle. She speeds off. She's watching in the rearview mirror in horror as this thing's not only keeping up with her car as she's accelerating, but it leaped and grabbed hold of her trunk.
Oh, wow.
She's screaming her head off, panicking. She's jerking her wheel back and forth, trying to swerving all over the road, burning rubber. Tires are squealing, and this thing finally lost its grip and rolled off into the brush.
Wow.
And she just floored it and went right to the cops and made the report. So, there you go.
God, can you imagine getting that report?
Oh, man. It left. She found claw marks on her trunk, her rear passenger door, and marks were actually on her rear tire. And actually, I guess when it was slipping off, it was trying to grab onto the car.
Oh, and it was on Halloween.
Yeah, October 31st,
gosh,
yeah.
Poor thing.
And that's what they said. Oh, you probably just saw somebody masked. Yeah, somebody kept up with a vehicle and jumped on your trunk. Yeah, okay. Yeah. People get crazy when they're drunk, but come on. Yeah. And who has real claws to put scratches in a metal car?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And to hang on to a car like that.
And to have your eyes glowing red and, growling and everything else. So I don't have a date for the next one. It must have been right around the same time. A woman alleged that the monster invaded her premises and tried unsuccessfully to break into her house. Then it went to her stable and attacked a horse, leaving a deep injury along the animal's back. Now, I think that's very, very important. Long claw-like scratches on the horse's back. You know how tall horses are, baby.
Yeah.
You got to be pretty big to scratch the top of a horse's back. Yeah. It's not a dog or something like, something that can't...
No, you got to be, standing upright.
Yeah. Like a person could do it if they had claws.
Tall.
Yeah. So your average predator isn't going to scratch along the top of a horse's back, is my point. The same woman said that they found 12-inch footprints around her property belonging to some kind of beast. It was barefoot-looking 12-inch footprints around her property. They found it all over the stable.
Footprints or paw prints?
Like paws, I guess.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I would have been really weirded out if it was footprints.
I don't know. It just says footprints, so I don't know. But I would think, from what I understand, these dogmen, they leave like massive dog tracks.
Wow.
They look like somebody walking on their toes, basically, because that's what dogs are doing. They're basically walking on their toes.
Yeah.
So, but if it's 12 inches, baby, that's it.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's a monstrous. It has to be footprints with claws or something. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, moving on, next story, 1992, and these are just all encounters with this thing, baby. In that area, we're talking about about a 12 square mile of Elkhorn, of Bray Road.
Oh, not a very big area at all.
No. It's all real local. Because I don't think the county's very big. But anyway, 92, Lori Endrizi saw something on the side of the road that she thought was a person since it was kneeling down. So she slows way down. It's on her passenger side, maybe on the right side of the road. She saw that the person was hair covered and that it was holding roadkill and eating it as though, quote, as though it had elbows, unquote. She said it was unlike any animal she had ever seen before, and it didn't get spooked at all that she was slowing down looking at it. I mean, baby, she was feet from it. And I'm going to show you the drawing right now, but it had long pointed ears, glowing eyes, and it had long claws, which frightened her. And again, I just said that she was only a couple of feet from it. She got a really good look at it, and then she sped off because it scared her. And she actually did a drawing herself. And, she's not a professional artist or anything, but it basically gives you an idea of what she saw. That's what she saw. She said it was kneeling down and it was holding roadkill and eating it.
Scary.
Yeah, like a dead raccoon or something. Crazy, huh?
Yeah,
and that's her actual drawing. That's the original drawing. So
it's not a bad drawing.
No, not too bad, but I mean, she's not like a professional,
Yeah, no, but...
So, the next group of stories, sightings have also been reported during daylight hours, with several witnesses stating they observed an unusually large wolf-like creature running on all fours through their cornfields. One stated the creature was in pursuit of a deer. The next point, there's no reports of anyone being attacked, but it always acts very aggressive. It growls, it acts like it's going to attack, or it'll chase people, but it's never actually, to my knowledge, ever grabbed anybody or harmed anybody.
Just animals. Just other animals.
Just animals. In fact, it's the next point, is animal mutilations have also been reported in the area around Bray Road, with animal remains, including deer and livestock, partially eaten with specific organs removed from the animal carcasses, which is really weird. So it's like it just ate the livers, or, partially ate them and then just ate like...
Yeah, that's very specific.
Yeah, or the hearts. I don't know what specific part. It didn't go into detail, and I didn't want to go into detail because I don't want to get too gruesome, but...
Yeah.
The next point, another witness reported driving down Bray Road late one night and observed an unusually large wolf-like creature eating an animal which had been hit by a car on the side of the road. Again, it's eating roadkill. The creature reportedly ran into the woods as the eyewitness approached it in their vehicle. So they saw it from a distance, it's eating, they slow down, it takes off running, and then they never saw it again. But again, almost exactly what that other person...
Yeah.
Eating roadkill, very odd.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into the later sightings, baby. July 2004, Katie Zan and her friends were goofing off. I think she was only like 15 or 16 at the time. They were goofing off in a field, and they kept hearing these weird noises of something large moving through the trees. So they completely ignored it at first, except when they started hearing what sounded like large branches breaking. So then they're kind of like looking over, they're like, well, what is that, And they see a hair-covered man. She described it as between 7 and 8 feet tall, a 7 and 8 foot tall wolf walking toward them. They ran to their car and just sped off, and she never went back to their area, and she never saw the creature again.
Heck no, I'd be gone too.
And I don't know how many friends were there. I don't think she really talked about it because I don't think she wanted to speak for them,
Yeah.
Or maybe wanted to keep, they didn't want to talk about it or whatever.
Yeah.
Because, people are worried about getting... But I saw the interview with her, and she's like a 15, 16-year-old girl, maybe. She's like a normal girl, very nervous to talk about it.
Just out there having a good
Yeah,
old
just
time.
hanging out or whatever, and, And this is the next tale, I'll say. And this is another really famous story, baby. It was November of 2006, around 1 a.m., Steve Kruger, who was contracted by the DNR at the time to remove roadkill. He was on Holly Hill Road. He had just picked up a dead deer and threw it in the back of his pickup. with his beacon light on, so he's got that yellow swirling light on top of his vehicle. He saw that there's no other cars on the side of the road, so he just got in his truck and started to fill out the paperwork right there. So he feels the truck shake, didn't think nothing of it, just thought it was the wind. But then his truck shook again more forcibly, so he looks in the rearview mirror and he sees this dark, hairy creature that looked like it was reaching into the truck bed, grabbing at the deer carcass. He said the body was heavily built like a bear, but the head was more wolf-like with a large muzzle and really pointed ears. He was stunned at first and realized it was nothing like he had ever seen before. He put the truck in gear and took off, just left it there.
Wow. Did it get the deer?
I don't think so, no.
See, a bear wouldn't do that, right? A bear wouldn't, like,
No,
climb
come up
into
to a vehicle?
truck,
No.
right?
Especially, I think he had the engine running. I don't think a normal bear, I mean, I guess if it was starving, maybe. But a wolf? No. A wolf or a coyote, they're too skittish.
Would.
A person would, yeah, maybe. But who's going to eat?
Well, no, I mean, like, a person would go up to a truck to get something out of a truck. You know what I mean? Like...
Right, but what? I don't understand what your point is.
Well,
are you
I'm
saying it's a person?
No, I'm saying that's like that's like
Oh,
what
like human behavior
like
is what
human
you're saying?
behavior,
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's not animal behavior.
Or
To
something
me.
that's not afraid of humans. How many animals are out there in nature that aren't afraid of humans, baby? Bear, you pretty much... I mean, unless it's like a really aggressive bear, like a mother bear with her cubs, or a starving bear, you can pretty much just clap your hands and yell at it and it's going to run away. Bears don't want anything. They catch one whiff of humans and they're gone. They don't want nothing to do with people.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're sick or it's, like I said, it's really hungry or something, then you got to worry.
Yeah.
Okay, all the way up into February 2018 and July 2020, alleged witnesses reported observing a large, hair-covered upright creature in Spring Prairie and Lyons, both in Walworth County. Okay, I guess that's what the county is that Elkhorn is in, Walworth County.
Okay.
Now, we were talking about this before when we were looking at the map, baby. Bray Road runs right by a major highway, the 12, and runs near the Interstate 43. There are some trees along the road, but the majority of it's just farmlands and fields. It's not desolate.
Open area.
Yeah, it's real open. It's not special or anything. There's no history in that area or anything like that. You know, it's not alleged to be haunted because, you know, people were executed there or something way back when. It's just a normal road.
Yeah, and there's no hiding areas if it's just fields. I mean, you know.
No. There are not a lot of places for a creature that size to make a burrow or raise young. So the next point, Bray Road is just east of Elkhorn, which is a small town of only about 6,500 people, so it's a tiny little town. Like I said in the intro, picturesque, baby. It's like the perfect American town back in the day, so much so that like they named it the Christmas card town because the downtown area was so cute and quaint when they put up their Christmas decorations.
Yeah.
That they made Christmas cards out of it.
Yeah.
And Ford actually wanted like a hometown town to put pictures in their catalog or whatever, and they went to Elkhorn and took photos. And
Oh, okay.
so it has other fame other than just the Beast. But anyway, since this thing or those things, we don't know if it's multiple creatures or just one, could actually kill a person, and this is just my own insight on this next point, it seems strange that they would rather scare the victim than actually attack them. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because, baby, if you're out of your car and you're on a dark, desolate road and you're walking back to see what you ran over and you see this thing in the middle of the road, there's no way you're going to get back to your car.
Yeah.
If that was a wolf or something or a cougar,
It'll attack you.
there's no way you're going to outrun it.
No,
By the
no
time,
way.
it's just going to jump and catch you. You know what I mean? Because cougars can leap, 20 feet or something like that?
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Horizontally.
And bears are fast.
Yeah, it's going to run you down. So would a wolf. So, to me, it seems more like it's content with just frightening the witnesses rather than actually physically attacking them, which goes along the lines of possibly being able to feed on fear. Baby, it's happy to just scare you because it's feeding on your fear. Because, baby, if you saw a werewolf,
Yeah.
that would scare
the
the
living
crap
daylights
out of you. You would be mindless with fear. I mean, you'd panic. I know I would. Of all the monsters out there that are like in Hollywood and stuff, baby, I think werewolves frighten me the most. They're just terrifying because they're just so big and strong and fast, and they got the claw. I mean, there's only a couple ways for it to kill you, and that's claws and teeth, which is just a horrible way to die when you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, at least a vampire, it's gonna like possibly seduce you or control your mind or whatever, so that you're just like big. You don't know what's going on, you know what I mean? At least that's not like a frightening, terrifying death, unless it turns into like one of those hideous vampires and then starts biting you to death or whatever.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's the worst one out of the bunch, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Anyway, since we just went off on a total tangent. Now, like I said before at the beginning of the show, baby, I thought this was just a flap. Linda Godfrey, God rest her soul, did research on these sightings, and just like I said before, she had accumulated over 400 sightings of the creature in that area. She describes the creature, and this is the various accounts, as 5 to 7 feet tall, covered with long shaggy fur, with a long muzzle and very prominent sharp fangs. She pointed out that the state of Wisconsin has Native American folklore, and that's one of the inarguable truths, like I said, about man-wolf sightings. She referred to the creature as a, quote, unknown upright canine, unquote. I believe she is still, even though she's passed away now, I believe she is still considered the expert on dogman, or one of the experts on dogman, because she researched it for like 20 plus years or something. Yeah. And baby, she was an investigative journalist. It was her job. So she had the skill set, she had the contacts.
She was an expert at research.
Yeah, she was an expert at research, exactly, and investigation.
Yes,
so.
Of course.
Now, this was my own research, baby. And this is the next point before we get into the inarguable truths. Wisconsin has the most animal-shaped ancient effigy mounds in the world. Not in the United States, in the entire world. Animal-shaped mounds, basically, in the world, baby. Just in the state of Wisconsin, which is nuts when you think about it. And you have to think, remember I talked about that Native American folklore, sort of Linda Godfrey.
Yeah.
Some of them are of wolf-like creatures with long, shaggy tail that correspond on a map overlay with hot spots of these creature sightings. And that was Linda Godfrey's research. I found that later. But Linda Godfrey's the one that did the overlay and saw that these mounds corresponded with where people were seeing this thing. And I don't think that is a coincidence, baby. How do you just dismiss that? You know what I mean? I did the research and found out that it had the most effigies in the world. Linda Godfrey did the overlay. So I kind of got the idea from her, basically. You know what I mean? And I looked it up on my own.
Right.
And I was stunned to find that out, that it has more animal-shaped mounds than any other place on the planet. That's crazy, baby.
Yeah, little Wisconsin.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say little Wisconsin.
Well, yeah, but I mean, just when you think of
not one
world... Yeah, but when you think of the world...
Right, it's a little tiny... I mean?
Yeah,
and Wisconsin, I don't think it's one of the bigger states.
And
I think it's like
mounds,
medium-sized.
So there's a lot of farm in Wisconsin, because that's where dairy farms...
Yeah,
and...
a lot of farms.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Those mounds can't be coincidental.
Yeah, I don't think so either. The sightings around the mountains, yeah, I think that's... how do you just dismiss that?
Yeah.
Is the question. So let's move on to the inarguable truths now.
Okay.
So number 1, coyotes are not, quote, the size of an average man, unquote, or larger.
Number 2, Wisconsin borders Michigan, where there are many dogman sightings.
Number 3, mass hysteria is not a good explanation for beast sightings.
Number 4, some Native American folklore talks about the wolf ancestry among some of the tribes.
Number 5, Elkhorn, Wisconsin does not benefit financially from the sightings.
Number 6, the traditional werewolf explanation fits these sightings more than the modern one.
All right, let's go back to inarguable truth number 1, which coyotes are not the size of an average man. Here's where we're getting into the debunking, baby, because one of the explanations that they're saying is, what's just a coyote? They're just seeing coyotes crossing the road. The largest coyote ever, period, was 75 pounds.
Well, that's not very big.
And it was 4'11" from the nose to the tip of its tail. 4 foot 11 inches. So basically 5 feet long. That's not, and that's with the tail, baby. That's nowhere near what a person would look like. What a 6 or 7 foot tall animal would look like.
No.
People say these things are massive. On average, a coyote's average weight for a male is 40 pounds, and the female's average about 35 pounds. They're not very big animals.
No, and I don't think people would be scared of coyotes.
How do you not recognize?
You know what I mean?
Right. If you have coyotes in the area and you see one, you're like, oh, that's coyote. It's not like, it's a werewolf. I mean, but that's why I say it's debunking, baby. It's that dismissiveness. Oh, people are just seeing what they want to see. Pareidolia and all that. It's just...
Well, like I said, coyotes, like, you'll just say, oh, there's a coyote, and then you move on. You just, like, don't... It's not going to scare you where you're going to say a story about it or nothing.
Exactly. And if you see one on the side of the road eating roadkill, it's probably not going to sit there as you slow down and look at you.
No,
it's going to take off running.
Yeah.
Coyotes are skittish. They're afraid of humans, not like these things are being described. Also, coyotes are like a reddish, usually have like reddish fur, kind of like gray speckled fur with reddish markings on their legs and on their ears. Usually, sometimes they're just solid gray or silver, but they're not dark. These things are described as having dark fur, like black or dark brown.
And
or dark gray.
coyotes don't have red eyes.
No, they don't have large, and that's the other thing. They say they're large, massive, glowing eyes. In fact, some of the pictures that I'm going to post, you can see that they have these massive eyes that are scary, and they're upright. Coyotes don't walk on their back legs.
No.
So I think that's why it's an inarguable truth. I think it's nonsense to try to argue that something 35 pounds is going to be like that one story we were talking about. He said it dwarfed his 140-pound Akita.
Yeah.
It dwarfed it.
Yeah.
So how are you going to mistake that? Especially when it's right there on the side of the road or it's crossing the road. See, the thing is with road sightings, baby, you have scale.
Yeah, right.
Because if it's walking across a road, you have the lines. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You see how much of the lane it's taking up.
Right.
There's no... People say, well, you could have thought it was maybe a little bigger than it was. No, there's no mistake. If it's taking up an entire lane, nose to tail, and basically crosses the road in 2 or 3 steps, that's a massive creature.
Yes.
You're down. You're sitting in a vehicle.
Right.
I mean, unless you're like in a lifted truck or something or in a big rig. But if you're in a car, you're low. So if it's eye level with you...
Yeah.
On all fours, you're not going to go, well, I might have mistaken it for something that's only 2 feet at the shoulder. It's just nonsensical to me. So that's what the inarguable truth is. I think it's a silly, dismissive explanation to say that they're just seeing coyotes. It's nonsense.
I don't see a coyote grabbing a roadkill out of a truck.
Right, reaching with a hand-like paw.
Yes, I don't see that.
So I think we covered that one.
Yeah,
let's move on to inarguable truth number 2. Wisconsin, this is a very important one. This was almost a mic drop. Wisconsin borders Michigan, where there are many dogman sightings. Oh, I don't know, a little something called the Michigan Dogman, maybe?
Yeah.
That's where all the dogman sightings originated. The Beast of Bray Road, from what I understand, was always considered a separate creature. But once you start putting in the stories and the descriptions and some of the encounters it's a dogman, right?
Right.
They overlap.
Yeah.
So, to me, that's very significant, and I don't think a lot of people put that together.
Right.
You know, again, if you're talking about all the way back in 1936, how aware were people in this tiny little town or the tiny area in that? Because all the cities around it are very small. The only one is, like I said, that large one is Milwaukee. But that's like 100 miles to the east of it or something. Most of the towns in that area are very small. So how is this guy back in 1936, this night watchman at that St. Coletta's church, how's he going to know what's going on in Michigan?
Right.
You know, for him to make up his story.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. So if people are seeing... So what I'm saying is that the sightings are throughout that entire area. Not just in Elkhorn, not just in Wisconsin, that entire area around the Great Lakes. And if you look at dogman sightings around the map, I would be interested to see if someone did an overlay where other animal effigy mounds are, to see if there's... Because I know one of the things about dogman is they hang around graveyards. They're reported around cemeteries a lot, which is really weird, odd. Parking lots, roads, people see them in fields, stuff like this. I don't know. It's strange behavior. They're dogmen are very odd, and that's basically what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We'd have to do a separate show on dogman because there's so much nuance and so many theories out there about them and everything. And of course, I have my own theories, but I just thought that it's pertinent enough to what we're talking about to earn being an inarguable truth is that it borders with Michigan.
Yeah.
The state of Wisconsin borders with Michigan, where the Michigan dogman is running around. So, again, if you're going to dismiss it as coyotes, well, then what are they seeing in Michigan?
They could be cousins.
Right. Cousins, right. Okay. Let's move on to inarguable truth number 3.
Okay.
Mass hysteria is not a good explanation for the beast sightings. Here we're getting into debunking 101, baby. Because a lot of I could only find one argument against it, and they were saying it's probably just mass hysteria. Well, they don't call it mass hysteria anymore. That's for one thing. Because you have to rename things and use big words to make people happy, right? To make it sound like you know what you're talking about.
Right.
Because that's what science and medicine likes to do, the academia. They like to make themselves smarter or sound smarter than they actually are.
Yeah, it sounds smarter.
So mass hysteria is now known as mass psychogenic illness. And I looked up why they changed the name, and one of it's they don't want to offend women. Because hysteria is from a Greek word that means uterus. So hysteria, being hysterical, that word was basically used to describe women when they would get scared or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Oh, she's being a scared woman, hysterical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they didn't want to offend. So now they call it mass psychogenic illness. Does it change the fact that it's all complete garbage? No, it's still garbage. Even mass hysteria was garbage, baby. So let's dig in to mass psychogenic illness, shall we, to see if it applies to the Beast of Bray Road sightings. They describe it as a phenomenon where a group of people experience physical symptoms without an identifiable medical cause. In my opinion, mass psychogenic illness is just a made-up, broad, generalized term created by academia to explain away individual encounters of the unknown. Basically, that's my opinion. Remember, you have to experience physical symptoms. These are some of the physical symptoms. Physical symptoms include headache, dizziness, nausea, abdominal pain, chest tightness, seizures, and physical paralysis. Now, Linda Godfrey talked to all these people. These people reported their sightings to the police. I couldn't find any reports of people, they were dizzy, falling over, had to go get rushed to the hospital, throwing up, saying their head was hurting, abdominal pain, chest tightness. I think I'm having a heart attack, None of that. Seizures? I think that would be in the report.
Yes.
If someone saw a dogman and started going into seizures, I think that would be included in the report.
Yeah, they would want to put medical attention to that.
Right, and even more, paralysis. I think if someone could physically not move, had no control over their body, I think they would report that.
Yes.
To the police or the authorities.
Right.
So we're not done yet, because there's psychological symptoms to mass psychogenic illness, which include anxiety, fear, confusion, and hallucinations. Now, any of those could apply to someone seeing one of these things, except we're talking about these symptoms would apply to a group of people. Anxiety, fear, hallucination. So in other words, if I saw this thing coming home from work, baby, and I told you about it, you would have to feel all the symptoms as well. That's mass psychogenic illness. We tell the neighbors they get the same anxiety and confusion and start hallucinating and seeing things. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Moving on. Still describing this explanation that academia is giving us for these sightings. Behavioral changes is another aspect to mass psychogenic illness, such as uncontrollable laughing, crying, trance-like states, or altered speech patterns. So in other words, I come home and start speaking tongues to you because I saw this thing. No reports of that. trance-like states, again, kind of like a paralysis, uncontrollable laughing or crying. What are they talking about? Again, Linda Godfrey, she interviewed all these people, sometimes within days of their sighting. No reports of anybody giggling uncontrollably for days because they saw this thing. Moving on, still talking about the same explanation, baby. It's described as moving rapidly through a group of people. So the whole town of Elkhorn would have to suffer from all or some of these symptoms. But if you really think about it, baby, most of the reports, some of them are years apart.
Yeah.
Some of them are months apart, weeks apart. Some of them are from different parts of the state. It didn't spread like wildfire and people just started reporting this thing overnight. Do you see what I'm saying? It was spaced out normally, randomly.
Right.
It wasn't some, because this guy over here saw it. Oh, now I'm hallucinating. I see this wolf in the middle of the road too. It's nonsense, baby. Symptoms may be triggered by a perceived threat. Again, still going on with academia's explanation, because you know how scientists are. They have these long-winded explanations for things to try to make it as broad as possible so that they can include everything and then broom it under the carpet. They may be triggered by a perceived threat, such as a rumor, a news event, or a contaminated food source. Some of the examples they give are like terrorist bombings or COVID. Okay, how are you going to compare that to the Beast of Bray? Get out of it. Here's a lollipop. Go sit over there.
Yeah.
You know, come on. Individuals, again, we're not done. Not done, baby. Individuals may experience different symptoms, but there is often a common theme or pattern. Symptoms typically resolve within a few days or weeks. So basically, they're saying if you have these symptoms, it has to be based on the same thing. So that kind of applies because people were seeing this dogman or this upright, unknown canine, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of applies. But then the idea that these symptoms of seeing this thing or being scared or anxiety going away for a few days or a few weeks, it just disappears? No, that's not what happened. People are still talking about it to this day. People are still being interviewed about what they saw to this day, and they still talk about it to this day. So it didn't just peter out and go away.
Right.
Right?
See, that is why people don't tell their stories.
Right.
That is why people will not come out because of these debunkers and because of this kind of stuff.
And that's why they do it, baby. That's why they do this kind of stuff. That's why they throw these explanations out there, because it makes people shy away from coming forward. And we've talked about this before, the headlines. You know, they get the general public to try to suppress the information so that not a lot of people believe it or not a lot of people look into it.
Right.
That's the whole point, you know?
Yeah.
They, with a capital T. That's what we're talking about. That's what the show's for, you know? But anyway, let's move on to the next inarguable truth, which is inarguable truth number 4. Some Native American folklore talks about wolf ancestry amongst some of their tribes. The Ho-Chuk, their ancestors of the wolf clan, were all wolves, actual wolves, according to the Ho-Chuk tribe's folklore.
Okay.
Long ago, the wolf people had no clothing and did not know how to use fire. At the time of creation, Earthmaker, which is their god, their creator, made 4 brothers, Green Wolf, Black Wolf, White Wolf, and Gray Wolf. These 4 were ancestors of the wolf clan. At the time, these 4 kinds of wolves lived on the Earth's surface, but after a while, all but Gray Wolf went to live in realms below the Earth's surface. And that stunned me, because we've often talked about these theories of these things living underground because we don't know what's down there, baby.
Right.
And this is what the Ho-Chuk believed. After a while, the Gray Wolves became Indians, and they were the ancestors of the Wolf Clan. This mythical ancestry can be seen in names given to boys in the Wolf Clan families among the Ho-Chuk to this day.
Wow.
They have wolf names in this Wolf Clan. So, coincidence? I don't think so. Because remember, the last show, baby, the Hobbits, they were saying that all this folklore talks about these little hairy things, and then we find the remains. How can you say that's a coincidence? Well, here it's the same thing. These stories go back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years in these Native American tribes' religions. You're just going to dismiss that? Oh, it's just people seeing coyotes.
Yeah.
Talk about irresponsible.
Which is still in their culture.
It's still in their culture. Now, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, and I apologize if I do. The Anishinaabe tribe believed the wolves and humans were once brothers who were companions. The Creator told them to walk together and name all the animals and plants. The wolf is an integral part of identity and kinship for the Anishinaabe tribe to this day. Again, the Ojibwe, I think it's pronounced Ojibwe. The Ojibwe consider wolves to be family members and refer to them as brother and sisters. They believe that if something happens to the wolves, it would actually happen to one of their tribe. They admire the wolves' reliability on each other as a family unit. The Ojibwe and the wolves traveled the world together and spoke the same language.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here? So they looked at, we're talking about them identifying with wolves almost like people.
Right.
Or family members, or some kind of cousins to humans.
Or even like ancestors, right?
That's what I'm saying. So what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
How can you broom all that? And this is in the whole area, baby. These Native American tribes are in that entire area of Michigan, Wisconsin, in the Great Lakes area.
Right.
And that's just some of them. Those are just the three that were the most prominent ones. I believe just about every Native American tribe in that area have something to do or something with wolves in their, story.
Right.
And you could say, well, that's nothing. They all do that. They all Native Americans look at nature and, look at, but not like this, baby. Not when it's talking about them being ancestors to us or family members to humans.
Yeah.
You don't see that in other Native American tribes.
Like that one tribe, they're telling that the human and the wolf, them being brothers, went out and named all the other animals and plants.
And walked together?
Yeah.
And spoke the same language?
Right.
What are we talking about here? Okay, so I think we covered that one enough.
Okay.
That was Inarguable Truth number 4. Let's move on to number 5, which is Elkhorn, Wisconsin does not benefit financially from the sightings, because that was another criticism. Oh, they're just doing it to try to get money. They just want attention, right? Because that's what they always say. It always comes down to money, right?
Right.
Everybody's greedy.
Right.
Everybody just wants a piece of the pie. Well, they don't. I could be wrong, but looking at a map of Elkhorn and some of the little businesses and stuff, I didn't find any Beast Burgers or, Bray Road Beast, drive-in or anything.
Yeah.
I didn't see any of that.
Yeah.
They don't have any festivals, any celebrations.
Yeah.
I think they had one, back in 2023 or something. They had one, but it was because I think that a documentary had come out for the area of the Beast of Bray Road, so they decided to celebrate it. They had one celebration, and it was just the locals.
Yeah.
It wasn't like on the internet where hundreds of thousands of people showed up.
Right,
And,
right.
tourism was rampant, and they were making all kinds of money because
Right.
people were buying away. It wasn't like that. It was like a little barbecue that they had in the downtown for the locals.
For the locals,
That
yeah.
was their celebration.
Yeah.
So again, this argument of, they're making up the stories trying to get attention, they're making up the stories to try to make money, is asinine. And immediately gets shot down because that's not what's going on in Elkhorn.
Right.
Feel free to do your own research if you're listening. I couldn't find any evidence of it. So what are they talking about?
Right.
But again, just dismissiveness, debunking, basically is all it is. So let's move on.
Okay.
So let's move on to Inarguable Truth number 6, and this is the mic drop, as usual, baby. This is the last one. The traditional werewolf explanation fits these sightings more than the modern one. What do I mean by that? Well, remember, dogman is this idea that they're a flesh and blood creature. Kind of like the flesh and blood creatures with Bigfoot,
Yeah.
They're or Sasquatch. They're rearing young. They're digging burrows. They're like raccoons and cougars.
Right.
I completely dismiss that when we're talking about the werewolf. And we've talked about this before when we were talking about
When we did the werewolf
Peter
show.
Stump.
Yeah.
The Peter Stump
Right.
show. Because he described the spelt. That's the traditional werewolf story, baby. And I should have included in this show, it was like some ancient Greek philosopher told a story of his friend being all bewailing and all upset because, you know, he had lost money and stuff. And he goes, oh, I just have to burn off some energy. And he starts stripping naked in front of this guy, in front of this Greek. And we're talking, baby, BC.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking over, you know, several thousand years ago.
Right.
That this story was related. We're talking back in the days of like Socrates and Plato, etc. You know.
Yeah.
This was this guy. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but the story is his friend starts stripping naked, to which the dude's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, what's going on?
Take it
here?
easy there, buddy.
Yeah.
You know?
What's going on here?
To his amazement, his friend looked at him and said, you should probably run away now. I don't want to hurt you. So he's like, what are you talking about? Watches as the guy snaps a belt around his waist and transforms into this massive wolf-like creature and starts to sniff around and trot down the road away from him. At which point, this philosopher, Greek philosopher, turned and ran as fast as he could back towards town because he had never seen anything like that in his entire life.
Right.
Now, this dates back thousands of years, baby. That's the traditional werewolf, shape-shifting. And it's the shape-shifting ability is bestowed upon the person due to rituals or magic or dark magic, if you want to talk about Satanism or whatever. You know, if you don't, oh, there you go, just gotta bring the devil into it, don't you, God boy? Just gotta talk about Jesus in the Bible. Anyway, I'm just saying, if you don't want to talk about God or Jesus or whatever, Satanism, whatever, dark forces, negative forces, whatever, you have to do something to that negativity to get the ability to change into this wolf, to change into the traditional werewolf. It matches here, baby.
Yeah.
Because if the heat starts getting a little too, you know, there's too many investigators walking around the area, too much stuff going on.
You're going to take the belt off.
Take the belt off and don't change for a couple of months, couple of years, whatever.
Yeah.
And then when you get bored, like the guy in the story with the Greek philosopher, you just put the belt back on and run around in the woods on occasion.
Right.
On occasion you run around, probably a lot more often, but once you're seen, take the belt off and you're not seen anymore. That's why you have these sightings that are like, you know, 99, 2001, 2003. They're spaced out. They're sporadic because the person just doesn't do it all the time because they don't want to attract too much attention.
Right.
Talking about human intelligence.
Yeah.
And if the sightings just one day stop and nobody sees anything for decades, the person died or they moved out of the area.
Right.
It matches the traditional werewolf more than it does the modern explanation of dogman. Because we talked about the area, baby. If this, you know, if you're still embracing this idea that it's a flesh and blood creature, you know, well, where's its burrow? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where is it? It's farmlands for miles and miles and miles. And why would it travel all the way near a major highway? Maybe for roadkill, okay, you could argue that, that's fine. But they're not the only predators in the area. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
They would have to compete for that. Coyotes can eat pretty quick.
Yeah.
Rabbits on the side of the road, they're going to snap it up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it would have to compete for food. It's going to travel. There's plenty of other highways. Why would it just go to Elkhorn or the area around Elkhorn or the area around these Indian mounds?
Right.
It boggles the mind, baby. Maybe that's where they're getting their energy from, their power from. Remember the skinwalkers of Navajo belief, they have to do these evil things and it allows them to shapeshift. We're talking about the same thing here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So that was my point. If it is a flesh and blood creature, where did it go?
Right.
Where's it living? There's no caves in the area. There's no... Do you see what I'm saying? Where would it live?
Yeah.
It matches the traditional werewolf. This thing just takes off its belt and goes to work the next day like nothing happened.
Yeah.
It matches.
Yeah.
So, in conclusion, baby, what do you think about the Beast of Bray Road?
I think the Beast is just another shapeshifter.
Oh, is that it? Just another shapeshifter?
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there.
Nonchalant.
But you know what I like? What I like about this show is I looked up Miss Linda and her investigative skills and her research. She was exceptional to that.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people gave her compliments.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked her up, nobody had anything negative to say about that woman.
She was very well liked.
They said she was very respectful. She was very kind.
Yeah.
Just a very nice person. So I think I just wanted to drop that in there too. But I think it goes back to the show we did about the belt. I think it's the same thing.
So you do think it's a shapeshifter?
Yeah, it's a shapeshifter, and it's probably if it's the belt theory, it's probably been passed down from ancestor to ancestor, because we're talking about 100 years.
Yeah.
The sightings for 100 years.
If we do a show on werewolves, I'm gonna have to do the research on that. But that I kind of shy away from it because it is dabbling into dark rituals and a darkness that I don't really want to mess with. But
yeah, me neither.
But this, I believe it's a personal pact.
Yes.
In other words, if I get the belt, I can't give it to my son because my son has to do another pact and get his own belt.
Oh.
Do you see what I mean? You can't pass it down. But what I know what you're saying, because it dates back hundreds of years. It's just different people doing the same ritual, baby.
In the same area?
In the same area.
I don't agree with you. I think it goes from ancestor to ancestor.
I don't think that's the way it works. Well, it's like any other, if you sign your life away, if you sign your soul to the devil, if I do that, I can't bestow it upon you, for example.
Yeah.
Because it's my soul. The agreement is between me and
I
whoever I'm making you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I can't pass that on. That's what we're talking about here. These people are selling
their soul,
their eternal soul, or
evil.
If you don't believe in the eternal soul, something along the lines of that is once they pass away, then they have to serve or do something in the afterlife for this negative force, this negative entity, in order to earn the right to do that on this planet. Shapeshift. So I don't think there's any way to pass it on to anybody else. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a pact. It's a pact with the devil. Or a pact, selling your soul or whatever.
Okay, I guess. Maybe they just keep in that area because of the mounds or something.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Maybe they get their energy. Maybe you have to be around the mounds when you do the ritual in that area or something. It makes it more powerful or something. I don't know. Maybe that's why the sightings are around those mounds. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, this is all speculation,
yeah,
baby.
It's complete speculation.
I'm not shooting. I'm not shooting your theory down,
Yeah.
baby, at all, because I don't know.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
just
either.
saying the basics of what I understand when it comes to the wolf pelts, where they throw a wolf shawl over their shoulders and it allows them to change into a wolf, or a belt, or I think I've even read stories where they had a cap, like a wolf head cap, and they'll put it on and that'll allow them to shapeshift.
wow.
It's usually some type of clothing.
Yeah.
But from what I understand about that aspect of werewolves, it's a personal pact. It's like skinwalkers too.
Yeah.
Skinwalkers, it's a
Yeah,
personal thing.
personal
They
pact,
have to
yeah.
they have to do all this horrible things, including, according to the Navajo folklore, they have to kill a member of their own family.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things they have to do in order to be bestowed upon these powers. So how could they pass that on to somebody else?
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. But that about does it, baby.
That sure does. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget, go on our YouTube, Facebook, subscribe, like. And also, if you want to send your stories and you want to get interviewed, send us emails about that, because now we're going to be taking interviews.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you for listening. Have a great night. Good night.
Yeah, about the email, it has to be done through email because that's how Zoom works. That's how you send out the invitation. So if you do want to be on the show, you do have a story you want to share. Again, if you want to remain anonymous, not a problem, but you do have to email it to us, and the email is in the show notes. So, good night, everybody.
Good night.